The implant. If you had asked me a year ago to paint a picture of my life, my marriage, and my family, don't expect me to have said it was perfect. It was great, sure, but far from the idyllic upper-middle-class dream. My wife was wonderful, our finances were solid, and we had 2 healthy, mostly cheerful kids. But perfect? Hardly. Perfection is elusive, and even in the best circumstances, there are always things to nitpick. My sons, Luke and Christopher, were great kids but quite the handful, especially during their teenage years. When the stress piled up, they could seem like little monsters, but that's just parental venting for you. Living in a small town in southern New Jersey has its charm. Around here, poking fun is a sign of affection. It's the ones who are overly polite you have to watch out for. Running my own business was a mixed blessing, full of highs and lows, much like small-town life itself. My wife was the closest thing to perfect in my world, though we had our share of disagreements. Still, we never lost that connection and always started and ended our day together. It's strange how small things can lead to significant changes, only appreciated in retrospect. One of those pivotal moments happened one evening with the kids asleep, as my wife and I unwound with some wine. Then, unexpectedly, she asked about her interest in cosmetic surgery. This question came out of nowhere, steering our casual chat into uncharted waters. It reminded me of those tricky questions like about appearance or comparisons with others. My wife, who became Brenda Lycaos after marriage, had always been self-conscious about her appearance in certain areas. Appreciating her the way she was, I knew this was a delicate topic. Financially, we could manage the cost, thanks to my career in dentistry, which provided us with a comfortable lifestyle, good education for our kids, and security, all while saving for retirement. Enjoying my wine, I remarked, "Darling, I think you're perfect just as you are." She seemed to appreciate my comment. "I know that, dear. After all these years, your gaze still holds a warmth unique to us. Yet, I've noticed that on the beach, certain attractive features tend to catch your eye." I was aware she had observed this. She had subtly hinted at it before. I didn't realize it had affected her. "Brenda, you are the love of my life." To a man, visual attractions are like shiny objects to a magpie. It's instinctive, our gaze naturally drifts. I apologize if it ever made you feel undervalued. You don't need to change anything for me. She rested her hand on my knee. "Don't feel ashamed, my love, nor think I held a grudge. I understand. Men have their preferences, and you're an exceptional man," she said with a pause, as I smiled. She wasn't reserved with her praises, which always felt good to hear. She added, "Vincent, this would be for me." The conversation took a serious turn. She usually called me Vince or Honey, but Vincent was reserved for serious moments. I sensed this intuitively. I took another sip of my wine, buying time to think. "Darling, I'll support whatever decision you make. I love you." That seemed like the right thing to say. Her face lit up. It may seem superficial, but being less endowed can affect how you're perceived, often feeling less feminine. I've been misunderstood in many ways because of this. Feeling more assured, I replied, "Darling, in my work with cosmetic dentistry, I've seen it all: braces, implants, whitening. You don't need to justify anything. Whether you want to proceed or not, I'm with you." Internally, I hoped she would choose not to. Taking my hand, she shared, "In high school, I faced endless teasing about my figure. The nicknames, the jokes, it was relentless." I had heard these stories from her before. I simply offered a look of empathy. She continued, "Even my initials were twisted into a taunt related to my figure. The comments were often direct and hurtful." With another sip of my wine, I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "High school can be tough. I fell for the person you were when we met, and nothing about your appearance will change how I feel. If this change will make you happy, I'm fully supportive." I really meant it when I said that, and I hoped it wouldn't make her rethink her decision. There was no need for worry, though. "Thank you, Vince, for being there for me," she expressed, her gratitude evident in her tone. Our evening ended with a tender kiss and a conversation about the upcoming changes. That night, there was no wild passion, just heartfelt cuddling, mindful of the little ears in the house. Yet, in its simplicity, it felt deeply intimate, marking a content close to our day. As time passed, we navigated the complexities of integrating this significant change into our daily lives. She arranged time off work, and I prepared to support her, especially keeping the kids' curiosity at bay, given their strong bond with her. Her endless patience with our teenage sons, a lively bunch, always amazed me. When the day arrived for her procedure, we traveled to Philadelphia, not far from our small but affluent community. Unlike many neighbors who worked in the city, I had the flexibility to stay local. I chose to wait in the hospital, reminiscent of the anxious yet hopeful hours spent during the birth of our children. Post-surgery, her transformation was evident, yet tastefully done, matching her stature. My focus was not on admiration but on her comfort and recovery. We both knew the post-operative guidelines well, leading to a period of gentle care and patience at home. The doctor advised a cautious approach to intimacy, with a specific timeline for physical closeness. We marked this date on the calendar, humorously explained to our curious sons as a pest control visit. Our journey back to physical intimacy was careful and measured, with life's usual distractions and my cautious respect for her healing. It was a period of anticipation, likened to waiting to open a known but untouchable Christmas gift. She often spent her leisure time shopping, something I hadn't anticipated would be so significant to her. Her enthusiasm for updating her wardrobe was evident, and she wanted me to be part of the shopping experience. I tried it once, but found it unbearable. I'm not fond of shopping at all, let alone accompanying someone else. Given a choice, there are numerous things I'd prefer over observing someone else shop. She got it, though. Her happiness was what mattered most. When she resumed her job, I felt joy hearing her tales about the impact her new look had on acquaintances. "Honey, it feels like I'm seen as a new person. Is it a problem?" "Not at all. It's all good vibes. They're finally recognizing the wonderful person you are. It's unfortunate how shallow some can be." I was worried for a second that she caught me glancing briefly at her appearance, which could have undermined the sincerity of my words. But it seemed to go unnoticed. "You've always seen the real me, dear. These new glances can't compare to the ones you've given me all along," she said, sealing it with a kiss. Our neighborhood gatherings took on a new dynamic. We were usually at a neighbor's house or hosting at ours 3 out of 4 weekends. Her recent change was not a secret and became a common topic of conversation, something I hadn't fully prepared for despite her stories. At one such event, hosted by Dexter and Lisa Evans, who were casual acquaintances, the atmosphere was family-friendly as usual. But the air was different this time, with Brenda becoming the center of attention. I felt a bit out of place, especially after she and Stu Anderson exchanged a warm hug. I had been cautious, adhering to the doctor's advice, avoiding too much physical interaction. The Andersons, Stuart and Debbie, were our nearby neighbors. Stuart, who insisted on being called Stu, was known for his flashy new gold BMW and his penchant for flaunting his supposed financial acumen. Unlike Stu, who often bragged about his investment successes, I preferred a more conservative approach to investing, focusing on long-term stability without feeling the need to boast. Despite Stu's claims of financial wizardry, he hadn't left his day job, which I found telling. The embrace itself wasn't out of the ordinary. Stu had a way of being warmly tactile with everyone, offering hearty handshakes to men and sometimes embracing them too. What caught my attention was the nickname he used for Brenda, calling her Bullets. Her response, "Hugs to the jugs," also struck a chord with me. The term bullets puzzled me, and her reply even more so. When Stu and Debbie mingled away, I questioned Brenda about it. She returned a knowing look, one that acknowledged my confusion without belittling it, explaining it was part of a humorous story she shared among close friends. Indeed, I remembered that story, a light-hearted teenage anecdote she recounted within our circle. Normally, I wouldn't have thought much of it, but seeing Stu embrace my wife and her playful reply unsettled me. Stu's forward manner and Brenda's social response to it made me uneasy, yet I tried to dismiss these feelings as the day unfolded. The atmosphere remained jovial, with both men and women playfully commenting on Brenda's appearance, which seemed to become an open topic for discussion. Brenda seemed to enjoy the attention, and while there were casual remarks directed at us about enjoying our time together, I felt somewhat sidelined in the conversation. The day ended without further incident, and we returned home without addressing my unease, opting to consider the day a celebration of Brenda's newfound confidence. The awaited day finally arrived, marking a new chapter for us, but plans changed and we didn't have the house to ourselves. Instead, Brenda's mother, affectionately known as Grandmama to the kids and Mom to me, looked after them at our place, allowing us a brief staycation. She was always happy to help, living close by and often stepping in to give us a night out, especially since her house, preserved in memory of her late husband, wasn't ideal for the boys' visits. They preferred the comfort of their own home, filled with their games and movies, avoiding the melancholy atmosphere of their grandmother's living museum. As a bonus, she always cooked more than we needed, ensuring the boys and I were well fed, and she was an exceptional cook. She had a passion for making meals from scratch, particularly her pasta gravy, which was legendary. In our neck of the woods, it's not just sauce, it's gravy, and it's magnificent. She prepared enough to last us a week. Everything was perfect when Brenda and I set off for the weekend, our excitement feeding off each other as we left the city behind. We had reserved a room at a large hotel chain, a rarity back home. The anticipation was unmistakable, present during the drive, upon check-in, and intensifying as we navigated the hallway to our room. Upon entering, I was overwhelmed with eagerness, feeling like I couldn't wait another moment to be close to Brenda. She had a different idea. She asked me to wait on the bed and disappeared into the bathroom with her overnight bag, leaving me wondering about her plans. After about 15 minutes, she re-emerged looking unchanged but holding her phone. Perhaps she needed to send a message or check on something urgent, but that wasn't the case. She flashed me a playful smile, ready for a surprise. "What surprise?" I inquired. She led me to a chair and started playing some Middle Eastern tunes on her iPhone, then began a dance that was clearly well practiced. She wore new, delicate garments that I had never seen before, and she removed them slowly, in sync with the music. Her confidence and precision in her movements were mesmerizing. "Patience," she teased, "you'll know when it's time." Her dance was a revelation of a fantasy I hadn't realized I harbored, adding an element of anticipation I hadn't anticipated. I was completely captivated, watching as she moved seamlessly from one song to the next, her ability to dance evident in every step. Brenda was not just performing a striptease, she was putting on a show that captivated me entirely. Then, with the music still playing, she approached me, concluding her mesmerizing performance. "No touching," she remarked while fumbling with my belt. My intense excitement made it challenging, yet she managed. She yanked my trousers and boxers down. My excitement was palpable. I was on edge, longing to embrace her. The wait had been long, 6 weeks of anticipation. Yet, her directive was clear: no advance until her signal. It was a mix of frustration and thrill, and the tension was building even before any real contact. Brenda positioned herself close, using her chest in a playful manner, her grin evident. "Do you enjoy this?" she teased. My mind went blank. I wasn't concerned about the right thing to say. "Yes." She pecked the tip of my nose, then whispered, "Good. But I'm longing for more. Do you feel the same?" I craved any form of release. Barely audible, I murmured, "Yes." My thoughts seemed to vanish. She positioned herself atop me. Her chest was close to my face, her presence overwhelming. I held her gently, lost in the moment, as she skillfully ignited my anticipation. It felt like rediscovering her, a blend of familiar and new excitement. Despite the familiarity, the experience seemed fresh, invigorated by her recent change, yet fundamentally unchanged. When she finally moved closer, I was overwhelmed, barely holding back. It felt like a challenge, a desire to impress as if on a first date. As she reached the peak of her excitement, I shifted my focus, a familiar rhythm in our intimacy. The beginning may have been different, but the culmination was as profound as always, perhaps even more so. Afterward, I was lighthearted, finding humor in the moment, thinking, this has been the best decision ever. Subsequently, we explored new dimensions of intimacy, fitting them into our lives as parents. Each encounter felt renewed, whether traditional or adventurous. Every position was an opportunity to connect, a testament to our revived passion. Exploring new aspects, like a playful encounter with her chest, was new territory for us. Brenda, always respectful in her language, didn't indulge in coarse talk, contrasting with the more outspoken norms of my background. Despite this, her simple inquiry, "Do you like how this feels?" was earnest and unaffected, a quaint charm in our exploration. We navigated these new experiences, maintaining the essence of our bond, finding joy and amusement in our shared journey, even in its simplicity. I sought to elicit a certain reaction, though it ultimately made no difference. I was entirely caught up in the moment. "I love the sensation of being close," I expressed. She almost chuckled, then her expression shifted to a half-serious look. "Do you enjoy being this close?" she asked. "Definitely. Feel free to get closer, they're entirely yours," she said, playfully referring to her chest with a fruit metaphor. It was a strange yet amusing arrangement. Our romantic life had rejuvenated, finding moments of intimacy amidst the duties of parenting. It brought back the exhilarating secrecy of our youth, now enriched by our matured experience. Yet, nothing is ever perfect. I had assumed my wife would be thrilled with the renewed attention, and that I would reap the benefits. In some ways, she was, and in others, not so much. At neighborhood gatherings, the interest in my wife's physique remained unabated. The frequency of embraces and the attention she received from men increased, as did the incidental contacts with her chest. A set at our home marked a noticeable change. Our trampoline, bought for our kids, was also a joy for Brenda, who prided herself on her agility. But now, her physical features became the focal point, attracting attention with every jump, almost deserving applause. She often came home from work with stories of new opportunities and increased appreciation. She mentioned how her boss, Alan Harrison, had started complimenting her work, which I endeavored to be open about. I was confident that Brenda would never be interested in Alan in that way. We joked about it, but still, certain instances made me wary. One such moment was when I returned home early to find Brenda and Stu together. They acted as if everything was normal, but Stu left quickly, which was suspicious. In our casual conversation, I probed, "What were you and Stu discussing?" Despite trying to hide it, my voice probably conveyed my suspicion. "He was asking about my surgery, something he's mentioned to Debbie as well," she replied. Curious, I questioned, "Why isn't Debbie the one here asking?" "It's a delicate topic, Vince. He's hesitant to bring it up, fearing it might upset her, even though he believes Debbie would be open to it." I had to acknowledge that made sense. Additionally, I couldn't help but notice Stu's interest in my wife seemed to be more than just friendly. It was a balancing act, really. It all came down to nuances. It wasn't the attention she received that bothered me, but rather her reaction to it. She didn't discourage it. Instead, she seemed to welcome it. While she hadn't acted inappropriately, she also hadn't set clear boundaries. Nothing overtly wrong had occurred, yet I sensed a gradual intensification that left me uneasy. I did mention it, in a roundabout way. It was uncomfortable. "Honey, I'm glad you're enjoying the attention you've always desired. However, I'm concerned about the lack of clear boundaries in your interactions. I would appreciate hearing you affirm your commitment to our marriage occasionally." Yes, it was awkward. Her reaction was as if I had shocked her. She appeared upset briefly, then assured me, "Honey, I love you deeply. I'm surprised you doubt that. I am committed to you. Any playful behavior on my part is harmless. If anything I've done has made you uneasy, let me know, and I won't repeat it." The issue was that I couldn't pinpoint a specific incident that troubled me. I regretted causing her distress. Seeing the expression in Brenda's eyes made me realize my part in it. I immediately hugged her, sharing a moment of closeness as if we were newly in love. The evening turned into a night of intimate connection, but I later realized she hadn't promised to set clear boundaries publicly. She was, in fact, seeking clarification from me, which I hadn't provided. Yet, she convinced me that her playful actions were insignificant. It wasn't entirely what I had hoped for, but her reassurance did bring some comfort. Over the following days, I clung to the hope that our discussion would suffice. Nevertheless, a nagging doubt persisted. I mostly kept my discomfort to myself. Brenda continued to be the same loving partner and mother, and our intimate life remained fulfilling. She shared stories of her daily interactions, yet something felt amiss. My sense of unease grew, leading me to feel insecure in our marriage for the first time. Despite outward normalcy, I couldn't dismiss the premonition of looming trouble. Our annual trip to Atlantic City that summer was as expected. As the kids played, we enjoyed our usual moments together. Brenda, in her new swimsuit, certainly caught people's attention at the beach. Although no one approached, the glances were hard to ignore. Brenda, noticing my reaction, teased gently, "Honey, it's like an instinctive reaction, remember?" Indeed, I did. It's quite something when your past remarks come back to remind you of certain realities. I found myself chuckling at the irony. There was a moment when my gaze landed on a woman with a modest figure, which unexpectedly brought back memories of happier times. I quickly brushed away that thought and we ended up enjoying a pleasant day together. The only thing on my mind was a nagging doubt, which probably would have seemed like unwarranted worry to anyone else. Deep down, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. We had established a routine where she would have her girls' night out and I, my boys' night out, roughly once a month. It wasn't about excluding each other, it was more about having time for activities the other didn't enjoy. These nights didn't always sync up, but sometimes they did. On one such evening, where both our outings were planned, I decided to act on my lingering suspicions. With my mother at home looking after the kids, I excused myself from the boys' gathering at the sports bar, feeling like a terrible husband for even thinking of checking up on my spouse who had never prompted me to doubt her. I chose a disguise to ensure I wasn't recognized, a New York Giants hat, a loud Hawaiian shirt I'd normally avoid, and sunglasses. Brenda, she's always had a passion for dancing, a hobby I never shared. The girls often went dancing, which suited all us husbands just fine. They always returned home timely and without issue, so there was never a cause for concern. On the night I decided to covertly observe her, Brenda was at the Cosmopolitan, a local spot known for its swing music on Saturdays. In my disguise, I entered the Cosmopolitan, searching for the group when Lisa Evans spotted me and exclaimed, "Vince, did you decide to join us tonight?" So much for my incognito effort. I played it off, saying I opted for something more lively than poker that evening, though it sounded unconvincing even to me, like a spy whose cover had been compromised. Lisa, unfazed, cheerfully suggested we dance. She led me to the group, removing my hat and sunglasses along the way to avoid further embarrassment. The band was taking a break, and the dance floor was empty. The group welcomed me, except for Brenda, who seemed pleasantly surprised yet slightly reserved. I couldn't quite read the expression in her eyes, despite her warm greeting and kiss, leaving me puzzled and intrigued. After I settled at the table and we exchanged light chatter, Brenda asked, "What brought you here tonight?" "Just felt like it. Didn't want to hang out with the guys, preferred being here with you." "That's so sweet of you. Let's dance when the band's back." Soon, the band resumed their set. Unexpectedly, as they returned to the stage, 4 men approached our table, each seemingly paired with one of the women, eager to dance once the music started. One of them was clearly there for Brenda. While I was taking this in, Brenda spoke up first. "Trent, you'll have to wait for our dance." I was aware she often danced with others here, it was normal, and she tactfully made it clear I was her priority. His better looks didn't bother me until he spoke. "All right, darling, just signal when you're free to dance." "I will. Make sure you're around, I'll be waiting," she responded. He smiled, then Trent walked away. "Darling." He had called her darling. That nagged at me as the band kicked off and Brenda pulled me onto the dance floor, along with the others. Dancing isn't my forte, especially not swing dancing, but I did my best, setting aside thoughts of Trent. Brenda, knowing my dancing skills, subtly guided to make it look like I was leading. We managed to finish the dance. Amid the applause, Brenda exclaimed, "Up for another." I wasn't really. My mind was still on the earlier incident. "Darling." He had called her darling. It was a level of closeness that made me uneasy. "I think we should head back to the table." "I need a moment to catch my breath," I replied. She smiled and led the way back. The other couples were still dancing, so we had the table to ourselves. "What's up with the outfit tonight?" Caught off guard, I could have been straightforward but chose not to. "Not sure, just felt like getting into the spirit. Seems I missed the mark though." "Sweetheart, you're the life of the party. Your energy when we dance is infectious. That outfit is quite something, but I adore your unique style. If it makes you happy, then I'm all for it. Ready to let loose. You found your partner. I was torn between feeling small and exhilarated, with exhilaration taking the lead. Then Trent reappeared as the music kicked in again. Got room for one more dance. Brenda glanced my way, darling. Having just escorted her from the dance floor, I was at a loss for words. Yet, I encouraged, go ahead, enjoy your dance, sweetheart. Observing Trent and Brenda together on the dance floor, it was clear Trent had moves. They were a striking pair. Her joy in dancing met his rhythm perfectly. And yet, a part of me felt uneasy. As the band played on, Brenda stayed away, fully immersed in the dance. The second song seemed to bring them even closer, their movements more aligned, showcasing a fluid partnership. By the third dance, I remained seated, watching. The room buzzed with other couples dancing, but my focus was on them. Their third number was mesmerizing, their coordination flawless, every step and touch purely for the sake of the dance. Brenda was radiant, and Trent, undeniably charming, caught the attention of many. When the music paused, Lisa returned, breathless from the excitement. Vince, I'm spent. How about you? Enjoying yourself? I half smiled. I was just wondering when Brenda would come back. Lisa, slightly tipsy, reassured, she's on her way back. What a dancer she is. Indeed, she is, I agreed. Then Brenda and Trent approached us. Brenda introduced, Vince, meet Trent. Trent, this is Vince. I reached out, offering a handshake. Pleased to meet you, Trent. He greeted me warmly. Pleased to meet you too, Lance. Clearly, Trent wasn't paying close attention. You're quite the fortunate man. Appreciate you letting me dance with your lady. She's an excellent dancer. Definitely. And you're quite skilled yourself, I responded. I manage, he said, then turned to Brenda. If you're up for another dance, let me know. Nobody moves like you do. You probably say that to all the girls, sweetheart. Trent chuckled. Maybe, but with you, I really mean it, sweetheart. He then strolled back to where he'd been. Sweetheart. Brenda used the same term for him. It was overwhelming. I disregarded Lisa's presence and, after Trent walked away, I asked Brenda, sweetheart. She seemed joyful before, but now her expression turned serious. She didn't feign ignorance. Does that upset you? Indeed, it does. He called you sweetheart, and what's worse, you called him sweetheart too. She paused before replying, it's just playful banter. I don't use darling for anyone else. That's our thing. Sweetheart is common here, used by everyone. It doesn't signify a special bond. I call lots of people sweetheart here, and so does he. It sounded logical. 3 dances, progressively intimate, and the term sweetheart. All seemingly logical. Yet, she had never used that term before, never had 3 consecutive dances, and I had never witnessed such intimacy. All logical. Throughout, Lisa remained quiet, focused on the dance floor. Impulsively, I pulled Lisa close and kissed her, touching her gently. I half expected a reprimand, but instead, Lisa reciprocated the kiss. It was I who stopped. Facing Brenda, I declared, if this is the game you're playing, then it's not just you who can play. I'm out, and going home. You do whatever you wish. I left the club swiftly without looking back to see if Brenda followed. Upon reaching home, my mother was surprised by my early return. I engaged in minimal conversation with her. She loves being involved in our lives, but I subtly urged her to leave. She sensed something was amiss but exited shortly before Brenda stormed in, visibly agitated. What in the world just happened? You were close with Lisa. You kissed her, and you're upset with me. Now she seemed to grasp the situation. She only needed some clarity. In a calm voice, I explained, crossing one line often leads to crossing another. Watching you and Trent dance felt like observing an intimate moment. You ignored me for 3 dances, and when you returned, you signaled him that you were engaged in the moment. I enjoy dancing. You don't. He dances well. It doesn't mean anything more. You think everything tonight suggests I'll betray you. Why? She was oblivious to the implications of her actions. It was time for honesty. I had skirted around the issue, but she needed to face a tough reality. I can foresee the outcome. It begins with a dance. You affectionately address someone who's not your spouse. Then, your boss invites you to the Adirondacks, and you become close because he shows you attention, leading me to sever ties and leave. What? How do you concoct these ideas? You're losing it. Tell me, Brenda, are the children even mine? She was speechless, momentarily stunned. I regretted my words instantly. Attempting to ease the tension, I started, look, Brenda. But she turned and walked to the bedroom before I could finish. I remained in the living room, lost in my thoughts, acknowledging that while my concerns were valid, I had unjustly doubted her fidelity. An hour later, Brenda appeared with a suitcase, announcing she was heading to her mother's. We didn't speak much. What should I tell our sons? I'll call them. I need some time away. For how long? I'm not sure. Then she departed, visibly angry. I felt the tension in the air. I had to uncomfortably explain to Luke and Chris that their mother would be staying at Grandma's for some time. Despite my usual portrayal of them as detached, they showed concern. It was a difficult evening. I reassured them of their mothers and my love for them, attributing the situation to adult matters, a vague explanation I resented in my youth, yet here I was, repeating history. I managed to ease the tensions at home, but I could sense bigger problems looming. My life was becoming chaotic again, and I couldn't pinpoint the reason. This turmoil followed me everywhere, even during Brenda's absence, disrupting my focus on everything, including my work. As a dentist, I prided myself on my professionalism and ability to concentrate on my patients and their needs. One day, while performing a routine tooth extraction for 70-year-old Shannon Tompkins, I found myself distracted. As I prepared for the procedure, something was off. Shannon appeared uneasy. "Relax, Mrs. Tompkins," I reassured her. My hygienist, Stacy, interrupted, offering me the Novocaine syringe, while Shannon looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "It's just a little dental humor, Mrs. Tompkins." I attempted to lighten the mood. That incident served as a wake-up call, highlighting how my personal issues were spilling into my professional life. I managed to get through the rest of the day without further unsettling my patients and realized I needed time for introspection. After ensuring my children were fed, I retreated to my den for some quiet reflection. However, my solitude was short-lived. Luke's issues with his gaming console led to a sharp, uncharacteristic outburst from me. "Work it out yourself." He left, understanding it was a moment to steer clear of my frustration. I was troubled, not by suspicions of Brenda's infidelity, but by the fear of potential issues ahead. I questioned whether my concerns were justified or if I was the source of the problem, considering her recent behavioral changes and my reaction to them. Despite her flirtatiousness, Brenda remained a devoted wife and mother, her actions stemming from newfound freedoms I had encouraged. I've always been one to analyze myself rather than seek therapy. That night, I was determined to unravel the mystery of our issues, to understand whether they originated from me, her, or both. I was resolute in solving this puzzle. She had shared with me her experiences of how her appearance influenced the way others interacted with her. I believed I understood her perspective, but in reality, I did not fully grasp it. She was navigating newfound attention and reacting in ways she hadn't before, and she had been open about these changes with me. I thought I had braced myself for this shift, but I was mistaken. What was causing my unease? Why was I so upset? My fear was rooted in the idea that she now had opportunities she hadn't had previously, which unnerved me. But was this fear justified? Brenda was extremely attractive and charismatic. She had always been in a position to draw attention from others. Her appearance was not the core issue. My concern was about trust and how I perceived Brenda's behavior. Realizing that my trust was waning was a harsh truth to confront. This acknowledgement led to the realization that I had alienated her by unjustly holding her accountable for actions she hadn't committed. This unfair treatment made me wonder why she shouldn't act out, given she was already facing the consequences. This thought process left me feeling remorseful. I managed to maintain a positive demeanor for my children and ended the day with a renewed sense of responsibility to amend my mistakes. It was clear that I needed to make amends. I rearranged my schedule and decided to surprise Brenda at her workplace with flowers, choosing birds of paradise over roses to avoid the typical apology symbol and to keep a low profile. However, I found out she had taken the day off due to illness. A brief surge of suspicion arose when I passed by a colleague's office, but I quickly dismissed these thoughts, recognizing they were part of the destructive mindset I needed to overcome. I resolved to visit her at her family's home, keeping it a surprise. Discovering she was there alone made me realize the extent of my neglect and the need for my support. On my way, mixed feelings of guilt, love, and a desire for reconciliation overwhelmed me. Reflecting on my behavior, I considered seeking therapy to address my issues. My priority was to reconcile with Brenda and support her through my self-improvement journey, ensuring we remained together through all life's challenges. These were my emotions as I arrived at her mother's home. She was unwell, and my only wish was to be there for her and provide comfort. Then, I noticed the shiny gold BMW parked outside. All right, I reasoned, she must have called Stu for assistance since we aren't communicating. Or perhaps Stu just came by to check on her after hearing about her illness. I wasn't fond of the latter possibility, but I realized it wasn't something that should disturb me. Although I had doubts about Stu's motives, Brenda was my treasure. Nothing unwarranted would occur without her consent, so I dismissed my concerns about Stu and his ulterior motives. My mindset improved, and I felt better about my more rational thoughts. I'm sheepish to confess, but I rarely visited Helen Benson's home. Brenda often went alone. We used to drop off the children there when they were small, but I seldom entered the house. Her door was always open, even in a neighborhood less safe than ours. Carrying flowers, I entered, feeling somewhat like an outsider, despite her frequent invitations. My house is your house. I enjoy family visits. I anticipated seeing Brenda and Stu in the living room, ready to offer Stu a reluctant hug and present the flowers to Brenda. However, the living room was empty and silent, which I found peculiar yet not alarming. Regardless of my prior suspicion, it was hard to imagine Brenda doing anything inappropriate with Stu in her mother's home. But where could they be? The master bedroom was at one end of the house, while the guest room, Brenda's old room, was at the opposite end. I had a vivid memory of it and presumed she would be there. So, I moved in that direction. Then, I heard sounds, soft voices. "Oh, please. Oh God." No, this couldn't be happening. Was I to blame? Had my suspicions always been valid? It didn't matter. Clenching the flowers tightly, I continued to listen. Oh, please, please, I'll do anything. That was the last straw. The flowers, bought with affection, were now poised for confrontation. I flung the door open and exclaimed, surprise. To my embarrassment, it wasn't the guest room. My memory of the house layout had failed me. It was Debbie in the bathroom, dealing with a difficult situation, as I later understood. She yelled out. So did I, dropping the flowers. Then, from across the corridor, Brenda emerged from another room, alarmed. Vince, what's happening? I noticed something different about her. Her appearance had changed. She was wearing a simple t-shirt branded with Dominic's Bistro, a place she liked before her medical procedure. All I managed to say was, hey. My words failed me again. I just wanted to surprise you. I heard you weren't feeling well. That was partly true until I spotted the luxury car outside and heard noises from inside the house. It's not about blaming anyone, it's just what happened. I hoped my half-truth would cover the suspicions that followed. I handed her the bouquet I brought. From the restroom, she called out, can we talk outside? I stepped out and closed the door behind me. Vince, these are beautiful, she said, accepting the flowers. How did you know? She seemed to think I knew about her decision to remove her implants. At that moment, I felt a higher power was at play. It's not important. I just wanted to be here. You didn't need to go through this. Tears appeared in her eyes. I had to, Vince. Things were great until this past year. I felt like this issue was driving a wedge between us. Your opinion is the one that matters to me. Her tears grew into a full cry. I embraced her tightly. Quiet, love, you never lost me. We shared a long, silent embrace. Then, a sigh of relief from her broke the silence, followed by laughter. I whispered, let's go home. And so we did. My comment, love a good faithful wife story, and Brenda certainly proved that by having her implants removed. But is that enough of a reason to keep her around?